Russia's steel industry was among the top five producers globally prior to the geopolitical upheaval of 2022, which coincided with a protracted period of sanctions. In 2021, Russia supplied approximately 4% of the global primary steel output, with production levels hovering around 76 million tons. Its steel sector was both domestically significant and export-oriented, supporting construction, industrial apparatus manufacturing, railway infrastructure, pipelines, shipbuilding, and defense applications. Russia had established a steel ecosystem that was both resource-efficient and integrated. Large iron ore deposits, coking coal reserves, a workforce with metallurgical expertise, and a robust network of integrated steel factories that were established during the Soviet era were all advantages that the nation enjoyed. The steel companies exported a significant amount of material to Turkey, Europe, and a variety of Asian and African markets. Infrastructure expansion and industrial development initiatives established a consistent, recurring demand base in the domestic market. Russian steel was a significant industrial and economic contributor due to the combination of a relatively concentrated set of large corporate actors, steady local consumption, and strong exports. Steel export revenue significantly influenced Russia's non-energy foreign earnings, enabling the sector to compete in global metal markets. A small number of large, vertically integrated corporations dominated the Russian steel market. Lipetsk-based Novolipetsk Steel, NLMK, has emerged as a prominent exporter and one of the nation's main producers of flat-rolled steel. Its operations encompass downstream finishing mills, steelmaking, coke production, and iron ore mining, which allowed for cost control through the integration of raw materials. Severstal, another significant company based in Cherepovets, garnered recognition for its extensive technological modernization initiatives and high-quality steel products. It made a significant investment in energy-efficient processes and digital automation, thereby positioning itself ahead of most competitors to achieve more stringent emissions targets. Evraz was a dominant force in the infrastructure and industrial sectors of Russia and beyond, specializing in long products, rails, and construction steel. Its facilities in the Urals and Siberia established some of the most historically significant steel production centers in the country. Before the sanctions era, these companies maintained robust relationships with European equipment suppliers, diversified export channels, and globally standardized technologies, which facilitated continuous improvement and competitive product quality. The imposition of sweeping sanctions in 2022, followed by the tightening of trade restrictions in 2023 to 2025, essentially altered the landscape. Almost immediately, a substantial and highly profitable export market vanished as a result of Europe's decision to close its doors to the majority of Russian steel. International shipping insurance became more difficult to obtain, logistical routes through Baltic ports became constrained, and financing challenges emerged. Production volume began to decrease. Domestic market uncertainty and weaker foreign demand led to a reduction in the output of steel facilities. However, even with the presence of customers, new markets like China, India, and the Middle East diminished pricing leverage. Consequently, profit margins experienced a substantial reduction. Problems with specialized certifications and moving customers led to the biggest drops in certain product types, especially flat steel for cars and standard European pipelines. Domestic consumption did not entirely compensate for the export losses. High interest rates and decreased construction activity restricted the demand for steel in Russia. Restricted access to sophisticated machinery, a frequent requirement in the metalworking and fabrication industries, led to a slowdown in industrial projects. Russia's relative position was more precarious than it had been previously, although it remained among the top 5 global steel producers. The capacity to restructure trade patterns, manage logistical challenges, and maintain technological capability became a determining factor in competitiveness. The Russian government implemented a comprehensive set of measures to maintain industrial stability, support steel production, and sustain employment, recognizing the strategic vulnerability of the steel industry. Central to these endeavors was import substitution, particularly in the case of machine tools, control systems, and metallurgical equipment, which had been procured from Western manufacturers for decades. The government implemented policies that included tax relief for capital modernization, financial incentives for modernizing factories with domestically sourced equipment, and increased state involvement in industrial financing. The production of CNC systems, rolling mill components, and robotic automation systems was assigned to state-backed firms, which were responsible for the scope of domestic machine tool manufacturing. The government also urged steelmakers to enhance their integration with domestic mining assets and adjust their output to sectors that are experiencing greater demand, such as infrastructure reinforcement and defense manufacturing. Russia bolstered its export relations with Asian and MENA countries in the area of foreign trade, while simultaneously establishing new logistics corridors on the Black Sea, the Northern Sea Route, and the Eurasian Rail Network. These initiatives exhibited a clear strategic vision to maintain the steel supply for critical economic sectors, sustain industrial employment, and increase self-reliance, even in the face of protracted sanctions. Due to its reliance on Western industrial apparatus and automation, the Russian steel ecosystem faced significant vulnerability. Several of the largest steel factories had acquired high-precision rolling mills, continuous casting machines, furnaces, cranes, and digital control systems from Europe, Japan, and the United States. Equipment upkeep became a critical issue as sanctions restricted access to maintenance, spare parts, and enhancements. Steel facilities implemented numerous strategies to preserve operational stability. Some systems were retrofitted to function with locally manufactured or Chinese replacement components. To extricate spare parts, maintenance teams increased cannibalization of idle units, learned independent repair techniques, and extended service cycles. Intermediary countries initiated the importation of secondary market equipment, including used Western machine tools, into Russia. In other cases, maintenance teams either decoupled or replaced control software that required external updates with domestic firmware modifications. Despite the implementation of innovative workarounds, long-term sustainability concerns remain. Diminished access to original components may jeopardize process efficiency and ultimately affect product quality. Modernization is impeded by the higher cost of alternative equipment and weakened technological integration, which makes it more challenging to produce high-value added steel products in a competitive market. Although Russian facilities have exhibited resilience in maintaining the operation of sophisticated machinery beyond the anticipated service life, such upgrading is a necessity in the face of geopolitical pressure. Russian companies chose to stop some foreign-dependent operations on their own to reduce legal and financial risks, along with the restrictions imposed by others. Firms restructured their product offerings to correspond with sectors that are less susceptible to global market constraints, such as construction reinforcement and military-related steel products, and shifted their business strategies toward domestic customers. New trade alliances were established. Russian steel manufacturers increased their export volumes to countries that did not enforce sanctions, primarily in Asia and Africa. Nevertheless, these markets often demanded lower prices, necessitating that Russia forego margins to preserve output levels. Nevertheless, this pivot maintained the operation of facilities and the employment of workers while also facilitating the gradual adjustment to new supply and trade networks. So what is Russia's long-term adaptation strategy and future outlook? Three primary imperatives shape the long-term strategy of Russia's steel industry: maintaining domestic production, substituting foreign technology with local solutions, and reconfiguring export markets to guarantee ongoing revenue flows. In the domestic market, Russia plans to increase the utilization of steel in public infrastructure projects, such as residential construction, pipelines, bridges, and roads. Additionally, the expansion of the defense industrial sector necessitates substantial quantities of steel, which results in relatively consistent internal demand. Accelerating the development of a competitive machine tool sector is a critical component of adaptation. Russia would be able to modernize its extant mills, automate critical functions, and produce higher quality steel products that were previously dependent on foreign technology. Success would facilitate these endeavors. The steel sector is currently the focal point of national industrial innovation mandates, as evidenced by the existence of numerous incentive programs. Simultaneously, environmental modernization, including the transition to carbon reduction technologies and electric arc furnaces, remains a future requirement. Russia recognizes that the global steel trade will place a greater emphasis on lower carbon metals, although coal-based blast furnace production remains the dominant method. Even if complete decarbonization remains an elusive goal under the current circumstances, it is probable that investments in energy efficiency and process optimization will be made. Ultimately, Russian trade patterns are undergoing a structural reorientation. Russia's international steel demand is increasingly reliant on long-term commercial partnerships with China, India, and Middle Eastern nations, as Western markets are largely inaccessible. Russian steel may be able to maintain its global relevance despite sanctions as a result of logistical expansion through the Eurasian land corridors and Arctic maritime routes. In conclusion, Russia's steel industry is currently facing a crucial moment. Access to global technology, capital markets, and high-value European consumers was available during the pre-sanctions era. Technological isolation, diminished domestic demand, and restricted trade currently confront the industry. Production persists in spite of these obstacles as a result of government assistance and the resoluteness of the corporate sector. The steel sector's primary responsibilities in the upcoming decade will include the development of domestic machine tool capability, the maintenance of Western-built equipment, and the adjustment of export markets. The extent to which Russia is able to adapt will influence its industrial strength and geopolitical leverage, as steel continues to be a critical component of national power, economic security, and technological sovereignty. If you think the video was informative, please like, subscribe, and share. Please also take membership of the channel to encourage us